There's a certain type of person who never seems to doubt themselves. They are direct, they don't sugarcoat things, and they don't apologize for who they are. Also, they know what they want and they don't let anyone push them around. Sounds like a confident person, right? Maybe. Or maybe what you're describing is one of the most insecure people you'll ever meet. Because real confidence and fake confidence can look surprisingly similar on the surface. Hey there, I'm Paolo. I make videos about confidence, productivity, and having the courage to build the life you want. So here are 7 things that insecure people do, but that are often mistaken for confidence both by themselves and other people. The first one is this: they are always right, or at least never wrong. And I mean, everyone likes to be right, okay? That's normal. But for this type of person, it goes beyond that. If you get into an argument with them, it doesn't end when the facts are settled or when you both understand each other. It only ends when you fully accept that they were right and you were wrong. And possibly you should also feel bad about it. And even then, even when you give them that, many times it's still not enough. Because maybe you didn't agree fast enough, or you didn't sound convincing enough, or you had the nerve to push back at all before finally coming around. There's basically no way out in these arguments because there's not a version of this conversation where they willingly stop. A confident person could say, fair point, and move on. Or maybe, let's come back to this later when we are calmer. But insecure people can't do it. Because the moment they concede something, they will feel humiliated. Which is why they always keep going and going and going until you either give up and submit completely, or you just walk away. But if you walk away, that becomes the next argument. Here's another one that's easy to miss, because at first it can often really look like confidence from the outside. Basically, they always know what you should do, and they are always quick to give opinions and directions. Problem is, they usually stop there, because they want you to follow their advice, but also don't want to. Because if you pay attention to it, they usually only give advice, they prefer to give advice to people who don't already agree with them, because they always need to be right. But if you decide to follow their advice and do things their way, even though at first you didn't want to, suddenly they feel uncomfortable and start to pull back. They'll tell you not to follow the advice because if it goes wrong, you're going to nag them about it. Or maybe they'll say that they don't care either way. They just don't give a damn. Even though 30 seconds ago they were just telling you what exactly to do. So what usually happens is that if you don't listen and their advice was correct, they will definitely find a way to remind you and tell you, I told you so. But if you do listen and it goes wrong, they will say they were just giving advice. It's you who decided to follow it. It's you who made the choice. Which wouldn't even be a wrong thing to say, if only they hadn't first nagged you about doing things their way. So basically it's heads they win, tails you lose. And of course that's not confidence. That's just someone who needs to be like the authority, but doesn't have enough confidence to stand behind their own words. This one, in my experience, is one of the most confusing things you could ever experience when you get into an argument with someone like this. So here's how it goes. The argument is already tense. And at some point, instead of listening to what you're saying and engaging with what you're saying, they take a step back and start narrating the situation as if they were a third-party observer. Things like, you're always like this. With you, arguments just have to happen every so often. You always get so emotional about this topic. And suddenly, you're not having an argument anymore. You are on trial. Because you now have to defend yourself. Not the original point, but your entire character. And when you start to defend yourself, that's when they'll strike and say, see, Look how defensive you're getting. Why are you so eager to fight over such insignificant things? And the worst part is that they escalated the whole thing, but are acting like they had nothing to do with how it escalated. It's, it's a trap. You can't get out once you're in it. You definitely know this person too. You know, the person who's always saying, I don't care what people think. I don't care how other people see me. I don't care about insignificant stuff like this. And you might be thinking, wait, isn't not caring what people think a sign of confidence? Yeah, it is, which is why I made multiple videos about it. But there's a difference between not caring and announcing your indifference every chance you get. Because not caring is quiet, you just don't care. You don't need to tell people about it. But when someone turns not caring into their whole personality and then starts to use it as a weapon in arguments to avoid accountability, it reveals the opposite. It reveals that they do care a lot. In fact, they are much more afraid of external judgment than people who actually say they are afraid. And this need to appear untouchable and indifferent doesn't just influence how they deal with arguments. It also shapes how they view the world entirely. To them, if you stay positive, if you are hopeful, if you believe things can get better, you are naive. Or maybe you are toxic in your positivity, or you simply have an easier life. Because appreciating positivity and optimism would also mean admitting that maybe they are wrong about always complaining about stuff. That maybe if they didn't spend all their time complaining and blaming, maybe they could do something to solve their problems. But admitting they're wrong about anything is not an option. So what they do is dress up their cynicism as intelligence and say stuff like, I'm just being realistic. I've seen how the world works. I don't live in fantasyland. And this gives them a false sense of superiority, which doesn't feel fake to them. This one is almost universal, and the reason it's so common is that for the person doing it, it's basically invisible. For example, they complain about people who are unnecessarily mean toward others, while being that person themselves. They criticize people for being a pain in the butt, while being the most draining person in the room. They judge people who are too whiny, while they themselves are always blaming everyone and everything for their own problems. And if you dare to point this out, well, rewatch items 1, 2, 3. And the reason they keep doing it is that it's much easier to see your own flaws in other people than in yourself. And self awareness, as it turns out, is something that requires a person not to be insecure about themselves. Alright, everything in this list comes back to this. The reason they can never be wrong, the reason they play games in arguments, they perform indifference, they attack others for flaws they themselves have, and they dismiss positivity. It all comes from one place: the belief that weakness is the worst thing that a person can have. Which is why they attack it wherever they see it: in you, in others, in themselves, all because they have a completely backwards idea of what confidence is. They think having confidence means having no weaknesses, or at least not letting anyone see them, and never backing down, never admitting fault, and never showing vulnerability. But real confidence is basically the opposite. Confident people can say, I don't know. They can say, I was wrong. They can say, I'm sorry, and actually mean it without feeling humiliated. And speaking of apologies, this is something worth saying because it's something I've noticed quite a lot. Insecure people hate apologies. Not just giving them, but also receiving them. Because giving an apology means admitting weakness. Okay, fine. But receiving one? Shouldn't that feel like winning to them? I mean, that's what they're always shooting for, right? Well, it doesn't. Because let's say, for example, that you've been arguing with them for a while. and you finally break and decide to apologize. And now they are suddenly faced with what they just did, which is they made someone feel sorry and small enough to actually beg for peace. And even though they pushed for that outcome, they don't like how it makes them look. Because they don't want to feel like the villain who destroys people in arguments and never stops until the other person apologizes. So yeah, not even surrendering and apologizing is enough to end the conflict. And as we said at the beginning, there's no way out. So if you recognize someone on this list, I hope it gives you some clarity. Because when you're dealing with someone like this, it can really feel like you're going crazy, like you're always the problem, like there's something wrong with you. There isn't. Or at least not as much as they'd like you to think. And if you recognize yourself in this, that's actually a good sign. Because the people who genuinely have all these traits, they will never recognize themselves in this. Or at least they will not admit it. So the fact that you are willing to take an honest look at yourself and admit your flaws already puts you way ahead of them. Because it means you are starting to see that being confident isn't about being undefeatable. It's about feeling secure enough that you don't need to be. Thank you for watching. And if you want to build that kind of real, stable confidence, not the fake version we saw today, check out my free guide that will help you do just that, even if you're starting from zero. Link in the description. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.